Welcome to the Susan Brender Show. It's all about you, featuring shows on health and wellness, the performing arts, politics, and people who inspire you to be your best. And now, here's Susan Brender.
I'm Susan Brender, and this is the Susan Brender Show. My guest today is John Trujillo. He first sang in a solo in front of a large audience in the third grade with the guidance of his third grade teacher, Hank Heineschen. You know, I think that he is going to tell you so much about his life and what he does that we ought to start right now. You know, John, you did very well in school up until your junior year in high school, and why did you have some difficulty in your last couple of years?
Well, you know, growing up, and I have to say I had a pretty happy life growing up. You know, quirks in my dad took a different job. We moved around a lot in the last few years toward the second part of my life, and I changed school districts, and I just I had difficulty adjusting socially, I think, from my sophomore to junior year, and it was just something I'd never experienced, and it made it very hard for me. And I think at the time, you know, I was part of a big family, and I think my father was so busy, and my parents that, and they were so used to me always doing so well that I think it kind of took them by surprise. I think it took them by surprise, but you know, I think when I look back on it, I think it made me a better person. I think it gave me more perspective, and I think, you know, it made me who I am. But you know, and I don't think, you know, and I think everybody at some point, you know, runs into unexpected difficulty. Mine just, I think, happened to come at that time.
Mm-hmm. And you were an athlete, playing both basketball and golf in high school, and you were ranked top player in golf in the state of California.
Well, my dad, you know, I played a lot of sports growing up. You know, my dad was a great athlete in high school. You know, coached sports. I had my big brother Tony. Was always good. We grew up playing a lot of sports, basketball, football, baseball, everything. You know, and then I started playing golf, and that was just the sport I guess I just really excelled at. And my dad really got behind me on it, and you know, at 14, I was a quarterfinalist in the Northern California Junior Golf Association Championships, and I put so much effort and energy in that, and that was great fun. You know, but I when I look back on it sometimes, well, I love playing, but sometimes I think I got very obsessed with golf. You know, in those years, sometimes I wish I had kept things a little more even keeled, but no, I loved playing sports growing up, and they were a big part of my life.
You know, it's interesting that you played sports and you could have done much more with sports, but you chose to go to the Navy. And I understand that you served 2.5 years, and it brought you to San Diego, where do you currently live in San Diego?
Yeah, no. San Diego, you know, I'm a California kid. I grew up in Northern California. So, like I said, you know, when I was in college or when I was in school growing up, I think, you know, my dad especially, I guess, you know, he always had just wanted me to go to the top schools, wanted me to go to Stanford University and everything. And then when I really struggled my last couple of years of high school, I think it sort of put all those big dreams on hold. And, you know, but I actually joined the Navy, and then I got this scholarship. And I did, it brought me down to San Diego. Now, eventually, I left, but I did stay there in San Diego for 10 years, and that was a big part of my life. I graduated San Diego State University.
Well, it's really interesting because you then moved on and you moved to New York City from 1999 to 2000.
Yeah.
And you originally came there to go to law school, but you started to perform again.
Well, you know, not then. I think when I you know, it's funny, New York, I think as a kid growing up, New York was probably the last place I thought you'd ever find me. You know, you have to remember, too, I think, and I was a kid, grew up in the 70s, New York was kind of a mystery place to me, even though I'd been here once as a 9-year-old. But I think all the movies in the 70s, the imagery they had of New York was of this decaying metropolis that was falling apart. And I think there was a lot of truth to that in the 70s too. And I think, New York was never a place. But I guess with the reinvigoration of New York, the rebirth, I had a friend who'd moved out here, was going to Columbia Law School, or going to not Columbia Law School. He's in a master's program at Columbia. And when I told him I was applying to law school, he saw that I wasn't applying to any New York schools. He just kind of sold me on this idea of New York City, and I came out here. I visited, and I started law school. But I lasted about all of a week in law school. But it brought me to New York City, and that was really, I think, it was important. Although, like I said, in my show From New York to New York and Back, in my first show, I kind of chronicled this sort of journey where the first time I came to New York, and then the second time, but that New York is as tough as they say. It kicked my butt. And I left after about 9 months. I was just, and then, when I got back to California, it took me a few months before I realized, how I had just given up on that, that New York was hard, but I just had to work harder, and it took me like about 5 years or 4 years before I was able to come back, but I started performing again when I was living in San Francisco in around 2001. That's when I kind of got the acting and performing bug, I guess, that I think was probably always in me. I just, had never really nurtured it.
Well, so you, in New York City, you started teaching and you taught at a community college, and you have taught for the past 10 years, mostly at the Borough of Manhattan Community College. And political science, where did that come about?
I guess, again, one of those things I just evolved towards. I finished my undergraduate degree at San Diego State. I was a history undergraduate major, and loved to study, and it was very fast. I guess I just had a curiosity. And when you graduate college, I think, there's a real confidence boost you get from that. A lot of my friends were going off to graduate school, and I'd never even thought of myself as going to graduate school. It was never something I really even, just couldn't see myself, because I think just getting that undergraduate degree for me was such a struggle. But then when I achieved that, and I just had this growing interest in politics, I guess I thought it was what would interest me, and I got this when I moved to San Francisco in 1994 and started taking classes at San Francisco State University and it even surprised me, I think, my growing interest. I also, though, just I had actually, if you remember, I said I struggled my last couple years of high school. I ended up when I finished high school, I really was a little bit lost, in terms of the direction I was going in. And I did land in a community college, and I think I found it was such a great experience for me. It was so great to have a place where I could go and sort of refine my direction. And community college, I found that when I went there, I had so many great professors, so many passionate professors, people that cared, and people who made a real difference in my life. And so when I was finishing college myself, I realized how critical that was to me, and how critical I think the community colleges are, I think, in this country, and how I think people undervalue them. And I developed a real passion for wanting to teach that level. And I always tell people this, I even tell my students, which is, that's where I want to be. I wanted to teach at community college. I really knew how it made a difference in my life. When I also developed an interest in political science, so it was a natural fit for me. When I graduated with my master's degree from San Francisco State University, I immediately was just so excited to teach community college. And I think, it was one of those things where, although I wanted to be a teacher, I think because I knew in the back of my mind, that it would give me a little bit of time to pursue something creative. And when I started teaching, that was really the beginning of my creative pursuits. And what I didn't anticipate is just how passionate and how those creative pursuits would sort of take over my life, though. Although but teaching it's been a passion for me, and I've loved it, and it's a performance in and of itself, I think, in many ways.
Well, it's interesting that you taught and then you studied acting and singing at the Herbert Berghof Studios from 2008 to 2014, and there you met your teacher and now mentor Eric Michael Gillette.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about studying voice and singing. I mean, you went from being a teacher to being a performer. That must have been an interesting experience.
Well, I'll say this much: you say went from a teacher to being a performer as if it's a simple. There's much more gray area than that, because I think it was. I never saw myself as a performer. I think. In about 2001, I was living in San Francisco, and I had finished up my master's, and I got my first teaching job. And as passionate I was about teaching, I was very passionate about it. It also gave me a little time to pursue some creative, and I started doing some stand-up comedy. Now, I continued from 2001. I have never stopped performing since then. But one thing kind of led me to another. I came back to New York City in very beginning of 2005. And I wandered in. I had originally been doing stand-up comedy, and then I found that it was taking so much of my time. I wandered into improv with UCB, and then people said, "Well, you should take some acting classes." I ended up, I kind of wandered into HB, and then discovered a passion for acting. So it was a much more subtle transition. Singing was something I'd done since I was a very little kid in the third grade in Mr. Heineken's class. That's why, and it was something I knew I could do. When someone told me, "Oh, they have singing voice classes here," I just immediately jumped into some of those, and then just took off. And from there, and even Eric Michael Gillette wasn't my first singing teacher. He was somebody I met down the line, but now he's become just such a mentor for me, because he, and I don't know if people don't know who Eric Michael Gillette is. He used to be the ringmaster at Ringling Brothers Bar and Maid Circus. He's been on Broadway here. He's a very active. He teaches at the Singers Forum. He now runs the program there with his. It's the EMG Collective now is what they call it. They kind of reorganized a little bit, and it's currently over there on 42nd Street. But and he oversees the studio, but he also performs actively in cabarets. Won cabaret awards. He does a lot of cabarets. Done Broadway, and so he's become a very. But he was a teacher who now I spend a lot of time with. But there's been a long evolution, I think, to get this place. And I've taught for many years. It's just that I think as each year has gone by, my passion for performing seems to be overtaking, my other more professional interests. Although I still do both, But that's just fine. It's a passion of love. And the creative bug is just, it's got to me, and you can't help it. You just, when you really fall in love with that creative performing bug, you want to spend every minute of your life, working on it. And I think that's what I want to do. It's like spend every waking minute watching something, performing something, working on something, planning something, getting out there, sharing your work with people, which is just such a powerful act, I think.
I don't want to put you on the spot, John.
Oh,
but,
by all means, go for it.
Okay, well, here you go.
Okay.
Can you give us a couple of verses, a very, very short little kind of tidbit of how you sing, and would you let our audience kind of get some passion from what you sing? Because, boy, you sound passionate. So just give us a couple of little verses, would you please?
Now you are putting me on the spot. I haven't warmed up my voice. Maybe I will try though.
Okay.
I hope but I'll sing a simple little song that I shouldn't. But let me just kind of give a little background to this song. My new show, The Ties That Bind, which is a show about family, and this song is a little. My older brother was, although. Well, let's just call him Bill.
Okay.
But he was a very influential person in my life. He's only a couple years old, and we fought a lot. But he also was the older brother I looked up for. And one of the songs I found, and this is a very obscure song, and I kind of I use it in the show. It's called "Which Way You Goin', Billy," and it goes like this. It goes, Which way you going, Billy? Can I go too? Which way you going, Billy? Can I go with you? I really love you, Billy, and all the time. I just want to be with you, Billy. Don't leave me behind. I know you think I'm a bother, but still I'm trying. I'll keep up this time, Billy, and there won't be any crying. Please don't be so mean. If only you show me, you'll see I can keep up, and you'll want me to stay. Please don't be so mean. If only you show me, you'll see I can keep up, and you'll want me to stay.
Oh.
That's just a little first verse.
Well, it's quite something. I think it's a very beautiful song, and
thank you.
It just shows how talented you are. So, let's talk about all performers when they get reviews of their work from time to time. Mm-hmm. So do you find that constructive or harmful?
I think first of all, I think the first reviews you get on a show are your own. And I think that's one of the things people don't understand is that you know your show. You've seen it from multiple angles. You have a lot of ideas already. And I'm always, I think everybody on the show are very harsh critics sometimes. But you also, I think what is different, though, is that you fall in love with the material even despite its flaws. I think like we all fall in love. So it becomes your baby, and sometimes you read a review and you'll read some negative stuff and you'll go, yeah, I knew that, but it's like you're not telling me anything I don't know, kind of thing. And then other times they'll say good things. You go, yeah, no, I knew that too. I think it is hard sometimes because you feel like, because it does become your baby, So sometimes you might get a little defensive because you feel like, this, you don't know, you just came and you watched it once, it's like my child. You just saw my child for 10 minutes and you made a judgment. I'm with my child. I know my child isn't perfect, but my child is beautiful and you just need to learn how to see. And I think sometimes when you're in a show, it's like, it is, you want people to understand the beauty in that child that sometimes isn't perfect. And it's hard because you put so much of your heart and soul into it. But I think sometimes, you do kind of look at it and you go, yeah, okay, but I've got to be honest with myself. My child isn't perfect, Yeah. And, so it can be hard, but at the same time, it's a necessary evil, so to speak, in that you want people to know about your child, your passion. You want people to get out and know, and it's just like a parent. You can tell everybody how wonderful your child is, but people are like, it's your child. But if somebody else tells you how wonderful this child is, they go, okay, now I listen. And that's all you want. You just want people to to validate what you already know. I think so. It's difficult, but you also know it's necessary because I think every performer who certainly worked on something just wants to share that work. People get hung up on the money and all that stuff, but not that I make any money on this, but I think for every artist, it's just sharing the work and getting people to, and hoping that people will appreciate it, which is always you can't make someone, right. You can lead a horse to water, can't make, you have to, and I think that's, and there's always a risk, but that's part of, that's what you get into, and that's what you do. That's what art is. It's a risk, but I think when you connect, when it works, it's just wonderful. And if this work doesn't connect, well, then you do another one, and another one.
So what was your favorite role or performance?
I I guess I have two, I suppose, but I can't help but say when I played, I got to play actually Ebenezer Scrooge in A Christmas Carol. And it was, even though it was a small little theater, the 13th Street Rep, it is a beautiful little theater that's been around there for many years. And one of the things I've learned as a performer is that there are no small stages. Only small performances. You can give a great performance on a small stage. It doesn't matter. The people that there will connect. And so, but I think that character itself, Scrooge, and I think it's so amazing to me that people still misunderstand this character. People always remember sort of the negative Scrooge, but I think Scrooge is such a deep character, and he goes through this transformation. In the end, Scrooge is just generous, magnanimous, wanting to share his love so openly, and people always seem to forget that he comes to this full circle. He's forced to examine his own behavior. He's forced to see his life. He's always seen himself sort of as a victim. He's never quite stepped away from himself. And the ghosts that come to Marley, who comes to him, of course, knows there is this good person in him, and he just has lost his way a little bit. And he trusts that by sharing these visions with him, he will step back from his life and see that person he was, and he will reignite this compassion for people that he knows is there. And so, I think what makes that role so wonderful is just you get to play almost every human emotion, and it was such a challenge, I think, and also a joy though. I barely left the stage. For one, I think only twice in the whole play did I leave the stage to a change, but I was always on stage, so it was very powerful. I got to interact with so many of the characters, and I think it was such a challenge because of all the emotional roller coaster that character goes through. There was nothing like it for me, just as an actor, to get to almost fully live in a character so much. So that I have to say is my favorite. Not just because I was the lead, I think just also the character. But, I've done other plays, though, and I've always loved every role, and it's always a challenge. It's funny because one of my other favorite roles, I played Tom Lincoln in the off-Broadway musical Honestly, Abe, which ran for about 3 years at the Actors Temple Theater here in New York City. And it was a story. It was a story that encompassed about the years of Abe Lincoln when he was about from 18 to 21. And I played Tom Lincoln, who was sort of his hard, very pragmatic father. And it's funny, when I met with my father one time, the subject of my roles came up. My dad said, "Oh, you probably think I'm a Scrooge." And I thought to myself, my dad's nothing like Scrooge. He's not a miser. He's not this. He's not. And I thought he was trying to say that to sort of. And I thought to myself, no, my father is Tom Lincoln. He is this hardworking man living on the prairie who's very hard-nosed. It's all about work. And that's who this character was. And I thought, because when I got that character, I thought, I know that character. He's my dad. And so I brought so much of who my father was to that character. And so that was kind of also fun for me. It wasn't anything I could have possibly cast myself into, but it just happened to work out that way. And it's funny, when I told my dad, I said, "You don't understand. You're Tom Lincoln. You're not Scrooge."
There you go. Well, John, everyone has a costume malfunction or flubbed lines or something from time to time. So do you have an outrageous, funny story or something that was embarrassing during a performance you'd like to share with our audience?
There are. I think the one, let me try to think here. I'm trying to think of the actual circumstances that came around. What was it? I know what it was. There's a very touching scene towards the end of Honestly, Abe, where through most of this play, I think it's depicted that Abe is this young man who has this passion for learning and reading books, and his father doesn't understand it at all. He just wants Abe to work hard, split rails, do his work, because growing up in this frontier life, that's how you survive. Books are not how, and the father doesn't understand. He just doesn't get Abe's passion for books. And there was this little book. There's this last song where, towards the end of the play, where the father relates his own experience of adventure on the Mississippi, and they sing this beautiful duet called Driftin', where they talk about drifting along the ocean, and they finally get each other. And the father finally starts to get Abe, and there's on the stage there was a little log, and we would hide a little book behind it. And at the end of the song, the father would grab the book, turn to Abe, hand him the book, showing him, "Here, take this book," and then shake his hand and send him off. And on my very first time doing this character, I turned, the book wasn't there. I had no idea, but in the moment, I just turned to Abe and gave him a big hug. And I think the guy who's playing Abe didn't know I was going to hug him, but I just hugged him and held on to him. It's like, the book's not there, and sent him off to Mississippi. And I thought that was a great improvised moment. And it's funny, I think later on, I just thought, I like the hug, and I would do the hug anyway after giving the book. But that was, I think, my moment of sheer panic when I looked and the book wasn't there, and I knew I'm supposed to hand him the book, and I just turned to him and I hugged him.
Oh, that's so wonderful. So what Broadway performance would you like to be in, and why?
Oh, gosh. I think, what people want to be in is, they want to be in a new original show. So it's like, I think everybody wants to originate a role, do something new, create an iconic role. So I couldn't. So there are roles out there that I don't even know about yet. But certainly I've seen roles. I think the ones that kind of move me, and these are ones that have been around for a long time that I go. Because one of the things I think, and I'm a little bit older now. I mean, I just passed 50, but. So you have to look for roles that you can fit. There were certainly when I was younger. Oh, I'll tell you this story. I think I remember, even though I didn't get into really performing in here in New York until I was in my 40s. I saw an audition for Tony for West Side Story, and I thought, when I was a young man, I probably looked like Tony. I was probably a lot like Tony, this passionate guy, and I thought, am I too old to play Tony? And it's funny because I went to this audition, and I do tend to look. I mean, people think I do look a little young at my age, which is, and someone once told me that people will accept. You don't have to be the exact age. That stage actors can get away with it a lot better. And I remember seeing Dick Van Dyke playing Music Man in his 70s, and I thought maybe they'll cast him older. It's all about the singing. So I went to this audition to play Tony on. It was a touring production here, West Side Story. It was one of my first auditions when I got to New York City, and I had worked on several songs West Side Story. And I thought, oh God, to sing the score West Side, be able to sing those songs West Side Story. Something's coming, and tonight. I thought that would just be a dream come true. And I had sung the song Something's Coming, and it's funny. I got the audition, and and I wasn't the only unusual Tony pick. There was an African American guy there, and but I did start to look around and realize, I'm the oldest guy here, But I thought I'll let the auditioners decide. And as I could listen out, I heard outside as people were auditioning, and I thought, well, I'm such a great singer, they'll pick me on that alone. But as I listened to all the singers, and there's some wonderful, there's no shortage of good singers in New York City, and all these guys one by one were all singing wonderfully. I could hear through the walls, and I thought, they're never going to cast me. But I went in, and the auditioner, the person there, she's very polite, and she said, okay, what are you going to sing for us? And I said, I'm going to sing Something's Coming, and then they said, okay, give them 16 bars, and I went from could it be? Yes, it could. Something's coming. Something. I'm all getting all into it, and I'm giving it my best, Tony. And she looked at me after I sang, and she says, "Good, but you're a little old for Tony, aren't you?"
Oh no!
And I just laughed and smiled, and I said, "Yeah." And I think it was sort of, and I thought, yeah, I'll never be Tony. I'll never be Tony. But that's okay. I gave it my best, and I got to sing a few bars of Tony. But yeah, no, I think that would have been. God, I wish I would have gotten this early. I would have loved to have been Tony from West Side Story. I think it's such a wonderful character, and the songs are just, some of the best songs ever written for a character, probably.
Well, we're going to go out in a few moments with that song. So just let me ask you what your future projects are, and are you working on them now?
Well, my latest I have so many projects, but Cabaret is certainly something that it's so much a part of. It's something that I've kind of started doing here in the last few years, but I find the medium of cabaret is such a powerful medium, and I think a lot of people just don't understand cabaret because it's not karaoke, it's not singing songs. It's this very intimate connection you create with you and the audience, and I think, and when you sing on a stage, you sing about that character's feelings. But when I can sing in cabaret, I sing about the songs I sing the songs that tell the story of my life, the triumphs, the heartbreak, the struggles, the passions, and I think that's such a powerful connection. My latest show that I'm doing is called The Ties That Bind, and it's about it's about my growing up in a big family, and just I think mostly it's about those struggles I've had throughout my life of trying to maintain those connections with my brothers and sisters. And it's funny, and I talk about just what it was like growing up, because I think I have so many just wonderful memories growing up. But at the same time, we were a big family, and we were all very close in age. And in big families, you fight because there's limited resources, and there's other reasons, and there's jealousies, but you love each other. And I have such deep love, for my brothers and sisters, but I've always had a difficult time just sort of building strong relationships with them. There's been times when I've had I'll have a good relationship with one of them, but then I don't know, something will happen. And so I think this show is about those struggles, those very real struggles. It's funny, when I sort of told some of my siblings, I'm writing this show about the ties up, I don't think they were too thrilled, just not knowing. But actually, I think if you come to the show, it really is a loving tribute to, I think, them and just the love I feel. But it's also, just about, how difficult it is. I think that song I sing about my brother is, it's about, how we were when we were little, and and the real love and admiration I had for him, and still do. It's because you can't ever escape sort of that birth order. It's always there. Yeah.
You're a very special brother. I'll tell you this much. There are very few people who feel that passion that you do for your family, and I think that it's quite admirable. So I want to give you the last word, John, and
sure.
What do you have to say to young people, for example, who want to go into show business?
Well, first of all, I guess people talk about show business, I guess, and on the high end of, there is a business out there where people make money off performance, and that is the high end. But I think the biggest thing is you have to really love the art. You have to, and I think when I was doing stand up, and I first started doing it back in 2001, and I just wanted to get up on stage and make people laugh. And when I finally started to get, I had some nights where people were laughing, they were enjoying, they were with me. It's very powerful. It's very powerful. And I kept doing it, and I started running my own little show with a friend. But I think, what happens is you start to you see other comedians out there, and they're making money, and they're making, some case, lots of money, and you start to think, well, I'm as funny as they are. And suddenly you're not about the art anymore, and you become about the money. And I think that's always a tragic mistake. I think the successful performers are ones, and I think, even though you have to recognize that when you devote all your life or so much your life to something, you're going to have to find a way to be compensated for it, because everybody needs to make a living. But I think when it becomes about the money and the success, I think you will lose what got you in. And I think you have to maintain that passion for the art and for what you're putting up there, and for that, and realize that it's that connection you make with the audience that is really what it's all about. Yeah, you want to have the biggest audience possible, and you want people to come and pay a fair price for a ticket so that you can sustain your art. And that's a wonderful thing, and I'm not there, and I have never been there, and I hope to get there someday. Mm-hmm. But I think it's always got to be about, because when I would get around other comics who start to become sullen, and they start to compare, and then they start to think they're entitled to something, and I think that's when you lose that passion. And I think that's when it's no longer fun. And I think it's got to be about the art. It's always got to be about. If you look at Broadway, and I've been around the New York City now for 10 years, you realize is that shows come and go, and I think most of the shows probably don't make profits. But you realize that the reason why people do it is because they want to be a part of something that's bigger than just about. It's about the art. And so probably more people lose money on art than make money on art. But so I think it's always got to be about the art. Because I think that you got to realize there's something bigger there, and I think if you're a parent, just make sure your kid loves the performance, loves the artistic part of it, because performing is, gosh, I really find it's the greatest drug on earth, because ultimately when you perform, you build this powerful connection between you and the people, that come to see you, hopefully. And that is the most powerful thing I've ever felt in my life, besides, I guess, being in love, or the love of family. It's a very powerful energy, and I think that's why people get so passionate about the entertainers they love, because they're so touched emotionally by these people, even though they don't know them personally. A song, a Bruce Springsteen song, or something can just touch our hearts so deeply. And this is why people, when they go to rock concerts, are just, the emotion comes out because they're so touched emotionally. And that's what that's just, Can I just say one thing, make sure before you don't forget?
Absolutely.
Because I do want to, I do have I performed The Ties That Bind once, but I will be performing it again, and that'll be at Don't Tell Mamas on Wednesday, October 21st at 7 p.m., and then again Sunday, November 22nd at 7 p.m. Don't Tell Mamas over there on 46th Street at 343 West 46th between 8th and 9th, which is a wonderful cabaret bar, and let me just kind of put in a good word for Don't Tell Mamas, because I love performing at this club. Sidney Meyer, who runs the club, when I first did a show there, we sat down, and he cares so much about the art form, and I can tell his passion comes through just so powerfully. He just wanted to meet me and talk to me as an artist. He was not all about, the money and the ticket sales and all this, and he really cares about the art form, and I can tell that that's a place that just nurtures new young talent and not the, and everything up and down, and it's and they create a wonderful intimate atmosphere for performance there, and I'm so looking forward to performing there again.
Well, John Trujillo, you have been a phenomenal guest, and you are an inspiration. So I want to thank you for being on the Susan Brender Show.
Thank you so much, Susan. Thank you for reaching out and asking me to do this. It's just been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to The Susan Brender Show.